So let me begin by asking you a question, James. What are these digital credentials and who benefits from them?
A digital credential is digital and it's a credential, so let's take those two things separately. We don't talk about digital qualifications, we talk about digital credentials. So there's a difference between a qualification and a credential. It's a bit of a license to operate, but a digital credential can also be my banking profile. It can be my qualification. It can be a short course that I did at GIBS. Or it can be my license to work at height. So all these things come together and they all form what we kind of call collectively as credentials. And then of course the digital component means there's some technology behind it. So the work that we're very busy with here and very excited about is how do we take digital credentials and make them accessible to our citizens, particularly the youth, those that are unemployed and are looking for jobs, but linking that at the same time with the supply and the demand side. So a lot of training happens in our country and there's a lot of unemployment. How do we link these two worlds? So a digital credential for me is one of those artifacts that is going to be a key to unlocking that problem.
With digital transformation happening, with so much digitization happening, it's an ideal opportunity to ensure that our workers, our learners, all the people that come to GIBS have all of their credentials, qualifications, short courses, recognition of prior learning on a digital wallet so that they are validated, they're verified, and they don't get the runaround every time they have to prove their competency, their capability, or their accessibility to a job.
The example I always use around this, Morris, is my CV. So when I apply for a job, I've got the formal qualifications, which is the foundation and all the good things you spoke about. On that CV, I list work experience. I list maybe the dancing course or whatever else on the CV. And if I apply for the job and I apply to Rios, I say, hey Rios, here's my CV. Colleague looks through the CV, she says, okay, I can verify this comes from GIBS, can verify this from UCT. This dancing thing I'm not so sure about, but we don't need it. But this experience, where James worked when he was 20 years old is really important to me. And maybe I can go to LinkedIn and I can verify it, because on LinkedIn there's a peer mechanism at least to verify. So what I see here, it's like a CV on steroids. It is a CV that becomes something that we can trust. Not only the formal part, but also the experience and also the other things. Because we have one nomenclature, one kind of way of looking at this together, in terms of the seamlessness of how we look at it.
The way that Ruxana and James have explained what this is requires many different stakeholders that at the moment aren't connected on a day-to-day level. Some are in small pockets, and these stakeholders all need to work together to make this work. So you've got the technology, but then you've got the organizations that verify these credentials. You've got the employers, and they're all in different sectors and in different places in the country. You've got learners, you've got employment-seeking individuals out there. And how do you reach them? And so we try to identify who are those individuals who can reach the stakeholders that will potentially use and benefit from the system, and what are their interests, and what would make sure that everybody's interests collectively can be met. Maybe not all your interests can be met, but the most important ones to make this work.
Excellent. What do you think the impact of this digital credentials exchange will be, and how does it compare to other similar initiatives internationally?
A frictionless ecosystem in our country can contribute to economic growth. Not only can the unemployed be matching to jobs in a more frictionless way, but by training the right people for the jobs and for the future jobs, we start actually talking about economical prosperity for the country. And as a developing country, we can leapfrog a lot of other countries in terms of what they've been doing. When we started thinking about these concepts we're talking about today, there were very few countries doing it, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now, a lot of our developed countries are doing this. A lot of countries in Europe are talking about these kind of systems. In the US itself, there are a lot of developments around this. And so in Canada, you can talk. So in the developing world, it's interesting that this is slow in getting traction.
Can you just give us a few of the gaps that you feel the Digital Credentials Exchange project will address?
I think the biggest gap that we found in the post-school system is the working in silos. It's a very fragmented ecosystem. So the universities are far removed from the TVET colleges, for example. The TVET colleges are far removed from basic education, and the feeder of education into TVET college is critical, and that leaves a major gap. So with a fragmented system, and I'm only just mentioning the education system, we are far removed from employers and employment and what employment requirements are. What do employers want when these learners exit the education, the formal education system? So there's another huge gap. Then there's professional designations, and each one requires certain things. They want certain layers of competencies that they say the universities don't address. That connects people on the back end. It is in cyberspace, so it is in the cloud. It needs to protect individuals' data. It needs to connect the right stakeholders, but when we go down to trust, how are we going to build that trust framework? It is a little bit more than the LinkedIn that James talked about, because LinkedIn is more on a social platform kind of thing where it is self-claimed. What we're talking about is validated credentials, verified competencies, trusted partners that are verified before they come onto the platform. So we have to have a governance layer before we do the exchanges, and that governance has to be built into the design of the technology. So while we have the blockchain that might be talking to it, we might have other technologies that are available right now, it has to be designed in such a way that it becomes trustworthy. So we really need to have that human-centered approach to technology.